Life is a series of unscripted experiences that forge us into unique individuals. These are the experiences and stories of those who possess the will, beliefs, and fortitude required to overcome obstacles, pursue their passions, and achieve success. Welcome to the HawkCast with your host, AJ Hawk.
Dennis Farrell joins us right now on the podcast. Dennis, thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate it. You got a nice looking studio over there.
I got to tell you, I spruced it up just for you.
You look very professional. You got a professional mic, so I appreciate that. It's obviously the listeners will appreciate that as well. Your nice mic on the boom, and you got your Fantasy Sports Network, like a mic flag on there. Is that yours?
It is. It's a brand new 24-hour, 7-day-a-week cable news station that's just all about fantasy sports. And
so what do you do for them?
Fantasy football, fantasy baseball. I'm kind of the nerd of the group. You know, I do a little TV show, kind of like what you do, except I'll have like actors and athletes, guys, just talking about their fantasy teams and stuff like that.
And how has I'm curious to see what's the perception of fantasy sports now compared to like 5 years ago?
It depends on who you ask, because it's widely accepted with TV shows like The League and stuff like that. A lot of your fellow NFL players are starting to pop onto that show more and more often. You see them. I think that's kind of helped open the doors to the mainstream group. So it's no longer Dungeons and Dragons for nerds.
Yeah, definitely. You're right. There's a lot of actually current NFL guys that play fantasy football. I know, and I always felt like it was. I've never really played, but I feel like it was. It's kind of a conflict of interest for a guy that's currently in the league. You know, like hoping. I don't know. They're always talking about back and forth of who they hope has a big game on. Other games going on TV or something. Like, oh, we need. I don't know. Whoever. Calvin Johnson had 10 catches today. I need 20 points, and it just seems funny to me it's so big now.
What's even funnier is, for me, when I get an email from a current NFL player asking for advice, it's a mind scratcher. Like, dude, you're in the league. I should be asking you for advice. So when these guys come to me and ask me, and it happens too, it's not like me being all braggy here, but it happens, and I'll be like, dude, what are you talking? And I won't name any names out there, but it's like,
you should name them. I think you should name them. Put them out there. Why not? That's not illegal.
It's not, but you know what? If they ever listen, and I'm sure, they might, I don't want them to be like, bro, really? You're going to call me out like that? And listen, how often do you get asked about it? I want to ask you this, because for you probably go out to dinner now, and it's like, AJ, listen, man, I need you guys not to give up a touchdown to Calvin. You're going to ruin my, or the flip side, like, how did you let him get past me? You cost me 6 points.
Oh, for sure. That happens all the time, and I think a lot of players get annoyed with it because sometimes that's all people want to talk about, or especially, I guess, whenever fantasy drafts happen, which does that happen at the start, like right before the first week of the season? Is that when it happens?
Usually happens about the Hall of Fame game, the first, exhibition game of the season. That's kind of where, it starts really rolling there. But let me ask you one more question.
Yeah.
I want to know, what's more annoying, people coming up to you asking you about fantasy or asking for an autograph in the bathroom?
Probably fantasy.
Okay.
A handshake in the bathroom would be more annoying. That's the toughest thing is a handshake. Like, all right, buddy, I'll get you. Just give me 1 minute. Let me get over and wash. Let's both wash our hands first and call this, and then we can really embrace. No, it's fine. Everybody's cool. I don't know. I've gone back and forth with the whole fantasy sports world of how I feel about it. I never really understood it at first for a long time when when I was maybe in high school and college, when I'd see guys doing it and they'd have these fantasy drafts and they'd call people over and whatever, have like a 6-hour draft to pick your teams. And then now I start to get it a little bit more just because it gives you a reason to watch every game, and that's all people want is something. You need a connection to the game, I think, and that's how I am with other sports. If I'm watching basketball, baseball, whatever, college football, really the thing that gets me is if I have like a connection. If one of my buddies plays on that team, or a relative, or just something, or my brother, we bet a box of Titleist Pro V1s on this basketball game going on. Like you always want a reason to watch. And do you think that's why people do it so much? Is just because they have it connects them to all, every game going on every Sunday?
Absolutely. You know what? It makes you feel like you're general manager. You're sitting there, for us nerds, while you're out there busting your butt on the football field, I've got my feet up on the couch, my laptop on my lap, the little stat tracker where the points pop up every 2 seconds. And, when AJ Hawk tackles Calvin Johnson on the 2-yard line and screws me for 4 points, I can now send you an email and go, thanks, bud.
Now you can get mad, yeah.
Solid.
Does it that reminds me of the scene from Knocked Up. Have you seen the movie Knocked Up?
Yes.
Of course, when Paul Rudd's wife thinks he's cheating on her, and she
Baby, I got Matt Suzuki in the 7th round. What are you talking about?
Yes. She walks in on him, they creep in the house, and he's having a fantasy baseball draft, and then the guy says, "Oh, don't let the door hit you in the vagina on the way out."
Yes.
That's like the epitome of, I guess that's Judd Apatow's version of what fantasy sports are, what fantasy drafts are. Do you think, was that a pretty accurate scene?
You know what? Probably 10 years ago. Now, I'm going out to Buffalo Wild Wings in a, place where I feel welcome now. It's like going to the South in the Confederate flag. That's kind of where you feel welcome. Not me, but anyways, you go to Buffalo Wild Wings. There's a fantasy drafts all over the place. I mean, have you accidentally walked into a Buffalo Wild Wings during fantasy draft season? It's oh my gosh, it's like billionaires at a strip club.
Do you go? Are you like a handicapper? Is that what you're called?
Oh no, I'm not a numbers guy. I deal strictly in fantasy football.
But I mean, like a fantasy football handicapper. Like people will come to you and ask who to start, who to bench that week.
Yes. That's kind of what I do. I'm an entertainer. I kind of keep it more interesting. There are a ton of guys out there that can tell you yards per catch on a third down. And I got a little cheat sheet. Everybody does, but there are some really smart guys out there. But I'm going to make you laugh while doing it.
Okay, so how do you come up with the process of telling people who to play? Like, say that a current player, like you said, happens, like they might email you and ask you what they should do this week or who they should draft. How do you come up with like your process to figure out what guys would be good that week? Let's say like if it's throughout in the middle of a season and you're wondering like who should I put in, who should I sit out that week?
That's a good question. The long answer would be like I have a Colvin and I throw like a leaf in there and turn it and look in and there's somebody on the other end tells me the answer. But long answer short, you look at the defensive matchups. I mean, it's almost like you guys looking at tape. When you go into a game, what's a run-heavy team, what's a pass-heavy team, who their main weapons are. You have a game plan going in on who you want to shut down. And it's no longer a secret. I mean, we know just about the same time on what your game plan is. And it's kind of weird, but that's kind of how we do it.
Are you guys paying attention to the injury reports, I'm sure, that go Wednesday, Thursday, Friday?
Oh, my gosh. Those things, it's like Christmas morning when they come out. You look for every little nagging injury, and you've got the Tom Brady guy that shows up every week with the shoulder injury. But Tom Brady's not going to miss a game with the shoulder injury. Now, when Darren McFadden shows up with a hammy, you go, all right, that makes sense. That's an every week thing, too.
And so for people that don't know, there's like, I guess it starts on Wednesday every week. There's an injury report that each team is obligated to put out through the league. And it says they've changed it recently over the last year or two where it used to say, you would know better than me. Well, I'm blanking on the words on what you're labeled. If you're like, what is it? Questionable, probable? What is it?
Questionable, probable, day-to-day game time decision, stuff like that.
Okay, so that's put out every week. And I would always think, I would sit there and see that like on our trainer's desk. And I'm like, why are we who cares? Why are we doing this? This isn't telling anybody anything. Like, why does the league make you do this and come up with, have like the trainers have to debate, well, is he probable or is he questionable? What is he? Like all that. And I realized it's obviously for gamblers. Gamblers need to know that. And the new age gambler is the fantasy leagues now.
The Last Boy Scout. Remember that old 80s football movie where that's kind of what he said. Damon Wayans, taking the pills in the bathroom. Bruce Willis pops in. He's like, and he goes on this rant about the injury report. He's like, it's for the gamblers. We don't need to know. It's for the gamblers. That's kind of, you're right.
And is fantasy football just legalized gambling now?
Probably. My favorite leagues. Some of my favorite leagues are free leagues with my buddies. I don't get into the leagues where it's like $100 to get in anymore. Look, the pressure's there, but it's for fun for me. I enjoy doing this. I'm one of those few lucky people that had made the leap from podcasts to actual radio doing fantasy football that you don't hear much. So I still enjoy it, and that's kind of where I come from. I'll let the guys with the big pockets handle the $100, $150 leagues. I got a lot of great people that donate some really cool stuff to leagues that I do with celebrities, and I'm gonna have to hit you up to get in one of them. It's awesome, but those are my favorite leagues. I don't like the stress of going, oh man, if this guy doesn't make the catch, I'm out of the playoffs and I lose, $1,000, and now I have to go tell my wife, oh, I guess I'm not as smart as I thought I was.
Yeah, and so is it DraftKings that's the official fantasy league of the NFL?
I don't. Maybe it's. You know what?
It's DraftKings or one of them. I feel there's an official fantasy league that the NFL basically sponsors, right?
It's probably DraftKings because they are for Major League Baseball, and then there's FanDuel.
Yeah, one of those though. So oh, you're good. I'm sorry. You go.
I was talking to one of my buddies who is on the Cleveland Indians, and he says, look, you go to a ballpark, it's plastered everywhere, but they're not allowed to do it.
Yeah, that's why I think it's a weird world where gambling's not allowed officially. I know what was it Chris Christie who shut down New Jersey trying to legalize the game, have like a sports book there maybe.
Right.
So that's not allowed, but then these fantasy leagues which are almost like a go around. I feel like it's some other way that they can package to make it look a little bit better, I guess, for the money leagues. But I guess at the same time, the big time whales that are betting huge money and that are the guys, they're not getting into fantasy leagues to bet. They're trying to get inside information and bet the line and all that. I'm sure, but there's still so much money that changes hands through these fantasy leagues that I think the NFL finally decided they want to capitalize on that a little bit.
Some would say it's a skill thing. You get in there with 12 other people, and you go all season long, and it's whoever makes the best moves, the smartest drafts, the quickest on the waiver wire. At the end of the day, the healthiest team wins. Or I'm not a big fan of the one-day leagues. Those are, baseball, it's all right. I can see where it gets addictive. I think I put $30 on. I won 40. I called it a day. I enjoyed it. But football, I like the season-long thing. I want to be invested in my players and my team. So the one-day fantasy thing, at least for me, I'm just not a huge fan of.
So the fantasy baseball, I know that you're a part of. I was thinking about that the other day. So there's people that draft a fantasy baseball team at the beginning of the year, and they keep them through 162 games?
It's painful. I won't lie to you. I play in one league, and that's it. And it's
so every day you're making a bunch of transactions, like every single day, right? Pretty much?
Thank God for smartphones, because I can kind of do it in the bathroom, or, when the wife's telling me about her day, I'm like, that's pretty interesting, babe. And I'm trying to waiver wire move, or my kid's showing me her painting. I'm like, shh, Daddy needs a picture right now. So just, put it up on the wall. I'll check it out later. But that one's a joke. But,
Oh, yeah, we know.
Fantasy baseball is tough. It takes a lot of patience for that. And that's why I like football better.
Yeah, baseball just seems overwhelming. There's so many games, and they play almost every day that I can't imagine people it would take over your life, I feel like, if you let it. So baseball just I can't even wrap my head around that. But I know the more people I talk to, buddies, everyone I run into, it seems like they're playing fantasy football, and they want to talk about who's going to have a big game that week. I'm like, bro, no one has any idea, first off. Everybody's guessing to some point. There's little tips, like you said, you can figure out if a team is good against stopping the run, and you got Eddie Lacy as your back, and the team they're facing is 30th against the run. Like, yeah, you might want to start Eddie Lacy that week. I'm sure that's obvious. But what kind of insider stuff though could you give someone that, like, what's an example of something that you would give to somebody that they wouldn't get just from old Bill standing on the street corner?
You know what? Probably depth charts. That's a huge thing. A lot of people don't look into the depth charts. Now, I can't off the top of my head name the third corner now for Houston, but you sit down and you look at the matchups. Say Cincinnati's going up against Green Bay. Not fair, I know, but you sit back and go, all right, good defense on Green Bay. You have a and Andy Dalton, who's been, a shaky in fantasy football. He's a great, real NFL player. Fantasy wise, it's not fair to say a guy can win on the field but doesn't get the points. But at the end of the day, it comes down to yards and touchdowns, and interceptions hurt. So you look at that matchup, and then you go, all right, you have Jeremy Hill and Giovanni Bernard. That's kind of a 50-50 thing. At least that's what I hear from camp. I don't know, maybe you see stuff like that.
Who knows? They all look good to me, man. Rex Burkhead, too, is in there. He's a sleeper if you don't know about Rex.
Oh, really?
He's a stud, man. Looks great.
But see, and then you go down, all right, you're in week 4. You go, well, Jeremy Hill probably had 10% more carries, but, the toes a little bit bother him, or the back, and Giovanni could catch the ball a little bit better. I'm making some of this stuff out. But, it's a lot of that kind of stuff, player analysis. This guy can catch, this guy can't, but he's a straight-ahead runner. But this is a great up-the-middle defense. And you might want to take a look at Reggie Bush this week because, he probably, most of his fantasy points will come out of the backfield, on the swing pass. Stuff like that will make your head just blow up.
So can you get paid? Would you get paid specifically to give – like, say one person comes to you and consults with you and calls you up. Are you like Matt McConaughey? Is it The Color of Money? What is it? What is the one where he's the handicapper with Al Pacino?
There are certain people that do that. I do it for free.
Okay. But you host your shows, like you make your living though off of hosting shows talking about this, right?
You know what? Here's a funny thing. I have a real day job that I absolutely love.
What do you do?
I work for Ford Motor Company. I work on the assembly line all day. That's how I started listening to your show and becoming a huge fan. I'm building cars all day long. I get to listen to really cool stuff, a lot of comedy podcasts. I don't listen to much sports, but the one thing I like about your show is it's not sports. It's, a sports player, NFL player just talking. And that's really what drove me to become a fan. Is I tweeted out to you the other day, which was awesome. When you tweeted me back, I was all giddy, like, oh my gosh, AJ Hawk now knows who I am. So, but from that, hard work, being somewhat decent on the mic, you start a podcast in 2010, and then you have a great organization like Detroit Sports 105.1. We'll plug there. Great guys, Dave Shore, Tom Mazaway, those guys kind of said, look, fantasy football is huge, but for whatever the reason, it has not, XM Sirius has the fantasy sports channel, which is huge, but on, terrestrial radio, it's not big. A lot of program directors are kind of scared away by it. And, this is a good group of guys that saw the need for it, contacted me, it's a match made in heaven, and here we are.
So when do you do that, the local show?
Sunday mornings, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I do a podcast for the website that's kind of more long form where, I'll have guys like probably you on eventually. I've had a great guy named Daniel Van Kirk, who's a comedian, does a great Mark Wahlberg impression. I've had Kevin Heffernan from Super Troopers on.
Farva, right?
Yes,
yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And, I get to sit long form with these guys for 30, 40 minutes and just talk about, their past drafts, their current drafts, who they like, why they like a player. And it's less about, all right, you got to take this guy over this guy. It's more about, why do you like this guy? Why would you stay away from it? It's more of a conversation aspect.
And are you ever surprised at how far this whole fantasy world stretches? Like the type of people that you would never think play fantasy sports, and then you find out they do?
It blows my mind at the people that talk to me. That blows my mind. Listen, I have a radio show. I do TV. I'm an auto worker, and here I am talking to AJ Hawk. That kind of stuff still kind of keeps me grounded and blows my mind. And it's really cool. And it shows that anybody can do it. If your first show, you were probably nervous, butterflies in your belly. You go out, you buy the mic, you sit down, you don't know what you're going to talk about. And then you turn it on, and then after like the third show, you really feel relaxed. And, go out and buy a mic, everybody. That's kind of, I never went to school for any of this. I bought a mic one day and just did it.
Now look how professional looking your studio is for the people that are watching the video version. Yeah, man, you sound like You sound like a little bit like Joe Rogan. He tells people, just start it, man. You ever listen to Joe's podcast?
I do, yes. I love that kind of stuff. Positive thinking. Don't put people down.
Yeah, obviously, anyone that listens to this know I probably mentioned Joe 2 or 3 times per episode just because he was like an inspiration in starting. I think he was for a lot of people's podcasts just because of how natural he was and how open and honest he is and how huge his podcast is now. But, yeah, that's the thing. You don't need anything. My brother has a podcast now called The Learning Leader Show that's huge, big time on, like, always up the charts and new and noteworthy on iTunes, killing it, business, and he's really professional and he's really good at it. But it's fun. It's a weird world how it is. But you said you went from, so you still do a podcast for the radio station. You went from podcasting to terrestrial radio. Usually it's the other way around where someone's on local like FM show and then they end up starting their own podcast and boom, it takes off from there. How do you feel like local radio is like a dying thing?
No, you know what? A lot of people say radio is, but I think radio has a great business model that eventually will have to kind of adapt to the podcast model. I think that's, a big thing, and I think they're doing a great job doing it. But, now the talent pool is big out there now. You don't have 5 guys that get shuffled through 9 radio stations in 4 years. You have a great pool of podcasters out there. Who knows? One day you may be on the radio. Isn't that kind of where everybody wants to end up? You'll still probably do the video cast, but one day you'll be, AJ.
I don't know about terrestrial, though, man. I don't think I want to be on terrestrial radio. I don't think that's my goal, that's for sure.
Why not, though?
I mean, I would do it, but to be there's so much more freedom in doing your own thing or being on the internet. I mean, everything's going on the internet. Like you said, you have a radio show on Sundays on terrestrial, but then you do a podcast that is for that radio station, right?
Mm-hmm. And then I have my very own podcast. So I do 4 podcasts a week.
Yeah, so what makes you think, though, that don't you think eventually that local radio, that terrestrial one, will be, because it's soon enough, it's already happening, where everyone is streaming Wi-Fi to your car, it'll just be that podcast. It'll be, I mean, you can call it whatever you want, but that local radio show is going to be just a streaming live podcast that you do.
Here's where I think it takes difference. Right now, how many phone calls are we going to get?
Well, you can on podcasts. I don't want to take phone calls. That's why I don't have any.
True, but we're doing this.
It'd be tough. You're right.
Yeah, but on radio, at least for fantasy and regular football, you have more of a person-to-person connection. You can take phone calls right away. The instant feedback. That's what I like. I enjoy communicating, and I also enjoy a long-form thing where it's just me and Kevin Heffernan, me and AJ Hawk just sitting around just talking and not being bothered by phone calls. So there's a yin and yang, and I like both ends of it.
I get it. That's definitely one of the positives from being on the radio is the instant feedback you get, and hey, Bill online too. And you take a call, which there's podcasts that are doing that. People that stream it live, which I think it's all going to. I mean, I respect your opinion, but I just don't see it. I don't see it coming that way. I think it's all going to be, it's whatever you want to call it. It doesn't matter. Like, it's still going to be, you can go sit in the station and in the studio and take calls and do everything, but it's going to be streamed instantly, basically online. It's not going to really be one or the other. I think it all is just going to merge into one thing.
Or if you're good, people will listen no matter where you are.
Exactly. Yeah, your fans will find you. You build a following, they're going to find you wherever that may be.
I hope they find me soon. I'm still waiting.
You hope they're – well, obviously they are, man. People know about you. They like all these crazy connections that you have, and it all comes from this fantasy sports world that you're in. Okay, so I don't know why. I've never played these games, and I have nothing against them, but are you into like Dungeons and Dragons and all that stuff?
Just because I have glasses on.
It's a valid question, I feel like.
Look, are you going to pants me in the locker room afterwards? That's all I want to know.
I was not a bully ever. But yeah.
No, I don't play Dungeons and Dragons. I don't know. The most nerd thing I do is Minecraft with my kid, I guess. She's 6. She got me into it. That might be the most real nerd. Call of Duty. Okay, I play Call of Duty. I'll admit it. I'm a PS4 guy. Late night.
Why don't you give the people your screen name then? Let them play with you.
Mr. Bigglesworth.
Oh, Mr. Bigglesworth. There you go. I wish I had a system. I don't have it. That stupid Halo 1, the original, got me completely out of video games because my college roommates, one of them, Nick Mangold, center for the Jets, who I live with and grew up with, and then my other buddy, Johnny, they would always play Halo online, like upstairs in their college house. And they're like, why don't you play with us, man? I played like once. And I got killed like 9 times in 30 seconds. You kept, respawn or whatever? Yeah. I'm like, respawn, and boom, dudes are just executing me. Like, this is stupid, man. These little 6-year-old kids killing me. And I haven't played since just because I wasn't good enough.
I'm okay. I'm not great or anything. I just do it because, a lot of my friends live in different areas, and it's just an excuse to get the mic on and talk junk to each other.
I got you, man. Hey, no judgment here, trust me. And if the Dungeons and Dragons question offended you, I'm sorry to have done that. I know.
Negative Ghost Rider on that one. So, no offense to the Dungeons and Dragons guys out there.
Yeah,
but,
that's the only game I can think of, like Fantasy World. I know there's all kind of crazy stuff but you hear people talk about, or the little old school is that old Magic game, game of Magic, like the little card game.
Listen, just because I like to fantasize about Calvin Johnson catching touchdowns doesn't mean I like dragons and warlocks.
You never know. I figured they all just meshed into one. I don't know, man. And but the good thing, yeah, I mean, we don't have to sit here and talk fantasy sports the whole time. I know people that like fantasy stuff probably will get right. They reach out to you and get in contact, and they want to talk to you directly, like you said, so you can give them tips. You're the guy that can tell them all these things about, what kind of, like I heard when you were just talking about different players being like, oh, he seems to run downhill more, and he runs in the middle of the defense, blah, blah, like compared to like an outside runner taking sweeps or whatever. I mean, you break it down pretty serious, so I give you credit for that, man. That's what's going on in the film rooms with the coaches and stuff. But I just don't know. I don't know. The jury's still out on how I feel like where fantasy sports may go. Do you think, is it just going to continue to get bigger and bigger and bigger, or is there a tipping point where people are going to get sick of it?
I don't think there's a tipping point, as long as people still keep it in the realm of it's meant for fun. People are turning into a moneymaker, but it's meant for fun. And that's something I hold more for the money. I got a good job. I'm happy in life, but I enjoy fantasy sports. Do I play for some money leagues? Sure. But I like to keep it somewhat affordable because I can lose $50. I can lose $75, but there's a league that contains a bunch of former MLB players that I keep getting invited into every year. And, it's like $3,000 to get in. All right. No, first of all, I don't want to have to turn to my wife and say, babe, can I borrow $3,000 to play fantasy football? Do you know my wife would slap the taste out of my mouth thinking about that, first and foremost. So, and then you have $3,000 writing all season long. You're going to second and third and fourth guess every move you want to make. That's not fun.
Well, yeah, that would put some pressure on you to really try to perform. But I'm sure it probably is funny for people. I'm sure would be surprised to know that I bet someone like you does a lot better than a current or a former athlete, that say a guy that played in the NFL and he's in the fantasy league with you. Is it funny to see how much better you do than some of them?
Yes, Mark Bolger, one of those guys.
Yeah.
Holy cow. I've kind of teased a little bit, but I do a celebrity league every year with guys like Matt Walsh, Rob Riggle's in this league, Ron Livingston from Office Space, Matt Besser, who co-created the UCB Upright Citizens Brigade stand-up, a bunch of guys from Veep, people that I have no business talking to in general are all in this league. And, we had every year we try to get a couple players in. Travis Hafner kind of became a good friend of mine, Cleveland Indian. Every time he texts me, I go, Travis Hafner's talking to me. What? Why? So it blows my mind. But you get in these leagues and then you go, well, why is Mark Bolger last? What's going on?
It's probably funny to see how little they know, or people are. I think players are biased towards who they take. Probably that would be my guess. I think I sat in on a couple rounds of a fantasy draft when I was in high school, and I remember watching the guy, I forget who it was, a guy that I knew drafted like his first round pick It was like the equivalent of saying my first round pick, Anthony Munoz. Like he took like an offensive tackle or something, and then he like stuck with it. Like, well, there's not even like in the draft, man. That's not how it works. He doesn't give you points. Like, no, he's my guy. I'm sticking with him, and that's like what players do.
Here's something funny. Every year I go down to the Hall of Fame for induction ceremony weekend. It's one of the most amazing places. I don't know if you've had a chance to go and walk around Canton, Ohio, but it is phenomenal. And I'm lucky enough to have media credentials, and I see and talk to a bunch of people. It blows my mind. But I'm standing there with Amon Green, former Green Bay running back.
Yeah, I played with him on. He's a great dude.
He loves fantasy football, but we're sitting there, we're talking fantasy football, and this guy tells me that every year he takes the Seattle defense first in the first round. Now, listen, most of your fantasy guys out there know you don't take a defense first. You don't take a defense in the first 8 rounds.
I didn't know defense even does anything really for you in fantasy.
It's a team defense.
Okay.
In fantasy, when the game starts, you start out, depending on how you play, but most likely you start out with like 10 points because, 0 points, 10 points, something nerdy like that. And then for every point you guys give up, then points get, deducted. Interceptions, defensive touchdowns, kick returns, all add points back to it. So, that's kind of how that works.
So, to switch gears, how do you go from all of a sudden one day, like how old are you first off?
I'm 37.
Okay, so how do you go from, still a young man, how do you go from working the assembly line at Ford to just all of a sudden, did you literally just go buy a mic and start a podcast and start talking fantasy sports?
I'm building cars. I enjoy my job. It's hard work, a lot of repetition involved into it. So I get to listen to different podcasts. And, for 2 years, I've kind of always, I can do what these guys are doing. Why am I not doing that? And then you go, they probably went to school or, they're all professional, and then you push it in the back and you keep going. And, I guess one day I was driving back from work one day and there's a Guitar Center and I kind of stopped in there and I sat in the parking lot and said, you don't know if you don't try, you think you're good enough. And then, walk in and you start asking questions and, I made the big mistake of going and buying expensive stuff. I bought the swing arm first. I didn't even know what I'm doing. And I had the radio swing arm. And I'm like, all right, now I'm professional because I look professional. I wasn't even worried. I didn't know what I was going to call my show. I didn't know, what I was going to talk about. But I had a swing arm. That was a start.
That's right, man. Just act as if, like Ben Affleck says in Boiler Room.
Yeah. And then, from there, you start doing it. And then, it's a dog-eat-dog world out there. So, my first guests were like, I don't want to downplay their significance in the sports world or whatnot, but they were not the guests that everybody always wanted. There's Brett Michaels and then there's Dennis Farrell, So I had, my first guest was like Todd Marinovich.
That's a great guest. I reached out to Todd. I wanted to get Todd on this.
Oh, great interview.
Yeah, I might have to. If you got his contact info, I'd love to get some of that. I'd love to get his info, man. In
a heartbeat, I'll do that for you. And then my second guest was like the ring announcer for TNA. Because he played anybody who played fantasy football, I wanted to talk to him. And then there was like the bench guy on the worst baseball team 20 years ago. So let's get him on. And then it kind of slowly moved up, and then. The one thing I'll tell people is if you're going to start a podcast, don't do it and then wait for people to come to you. You have to reach out to people for them to kind of know who you are. So, you send out tweets, you send out emails, you go on Facebook and you find guys, hey, listen, would you come on? And most of them will say yes, and you'll be blown away by who says yes. And then, one day you have a radio show and you're talking to AJ Hawk.
Full circle. I hope this isn't the pinnacle for you. I hope this isn't it.
It is. I'll be honest. I was all giddy. I'm on Facebook like, I'm going to be on AG. No.
You got plenty of space to grow. That's for sure from this. But, yeah, I guess it is. It's kind of cool, though. I think it's, like, inspiring to see that. Have Todd Marinovich as your first guest is a great get. But it definitely shows you that you can't sit and wait for anything. And that's like a whole thing people have now, talking about like the new millennials. These kids just want to sit back and they're entitled and everything's handed to them, blah blah, whatever. Yeah, there's a lot of guys like that, but now more than ever, you can do what you've done and what I'm trying to do here. Like you just got to get out there and hustle and not worry about it and reach out to people, and people are gonna ignore you and say no to you all the time, but it doesn't matter, man. Just keep rolling and keep going after it. And I think that's what everyone's doing in anything that'll be good. You can tell when a guy actually cares about it and is passionate about it. And I feel like you definitely are passionate about what you do, and people can see right through it. So I'm sure do you ever envision seeing yourself quit that job at Ford and just go full broadcaster / fantasy expert / personality?
No, not at all. I think, in all honesty, I have a great security net behind me that I go to work, they treat me right. I cannot complain. I have no knock on Ford Motor Company whatsoever, or the UAW. Each one has a bad rap sometimes, depending on who you talk about, but they treat their employees great. So that right there gives me the safety net to say, you know what, if I want to go out and do a podcast for Pro Football Focus and do it for free, I can do that. I don't have to worry about getting paid. If Detroit sports came to me and said, listen, we need cutbacks, we would love to keep you, but what we're paying you now, we just can't afford, I could say, cut it in half. I'd rather be on the radio, because
don't say that here, man. We'll edit that part out. Don't worry.
There you go.
Don't tell them to cut your pay. Say you can double it, buddy. I'm going to the competitor. That's what
you know
tell
who
them.
I am. Do you know who I am?
Yeah, whoever your competitor is, tell them you're going there. Tell them, well, they just offered me double, so see ya.
Yeah. I like you're my new agent.
There you go.
But it gives me that security blanket to go out and do what I want to do without worrying about, can I put food on my table? And I respect any broadcaster out there that does it for a living and is successful at it, because it's a skill I wish I could have and a confidence I wish I could have to put yourself out there and sing for your dinner every night. If Tuesday night I don't feel like doing a podcast, I don't have to do a podcast on Tuesday night. But if I have to sing for my dinner, I'm out there, I might have a little bit cough, but I've got my tap dance shoes out there trying to entertain you to the best of my abilities. It's a tough gig, and I respect those guys.
Yeah, it frees you up. That job definitely frees you up, I guess, to, like you said, that's the cool thing. When you run the show, like you run your whole deal, your podcast, it's up to you how many you do, and if you don't want to do it, or you want to try to do 7 in 1 week, whatever. But I'd like to ask you about Ford, this whole Ford thing. I didn't even know you worked for them. How is that what part of Michigan do you live?
I live about an hour away from my plant. My plant is in Flat Rock, Michigan, which is kind of close to the Ohio border.
What part? Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Flat Rock.
Flat Rock, okay.
It's kind of close to the Toledo, Ohio, Michigan border right there.
Okay, and I know what was it? Michael Moore didn't have a documentary, but was it Flint that they shut down a big old Ford factory?
Yeah, that's a tough racket, and that happened before I got a job there, in the mid-'90s, I guess it was. But, it's a tough racket. I've had to move. I lived in St. Louis, Missouri. I worked for the Ford plant there. One day they come out to us and say, we're shutting the plant down. You have 6 places you can move to. I chose Michigan. It was like Chicago, Lorain, Ohio, Avon Lake, Ohio. I guess those 2 plants combined, Minnesota, Buffalo, and I chose Michigan because there were a bunch of other plants here. And I figured, well, if they're going to close a plant, I might be able to catch on at one of the other 4 plants there. I didn't have any friends, no family here. Everybody I knew went to Chicago to be closer to home. And, here I am now. I moved in 2004.
Did you, so what is your day-to-day task? Do you work on the assembly line?
I do. My day starts at 6 a.m. It's a long day, and I get there, I shoot some fuel lines, and it's not an easy job. I won't lie to you, because we build probably about a car and a half a minute, and the line just continuously going and going.
What part of the line are you? What do you do exactly?
I work under the hood, and I do put some ground stuff into the. I'm not a car guy. I won't lie to you, so. If you ask me what that part does, I can't tell you, but I can tell you that it's like square and it fits into a hole, and I have like 6, I do a little under the hood before there's even an engine. It's just a metal frame that's painted, and the carpet goes in. I put some pins into the carpet, and it's kind of cool. I like it because I'm not in a, staring at a computer all day, like a lot of people are. I'm not, outside in the freezing cold. I'm happy. I don't know how many people are happy with their jobs, but I think me and you kind of are.
Ford's got to love you, man, that you're happy and you're not bitching about it, because I'm sure there's plenty of guys around you that probably don't like that repetition, do they?
You know what? There's not. It's not an easy job for the faint of heart. It's almost like the NFL. There are probably guys out there that cannot do 2-a-days in 102-degree weather. You may be able to. You're back and forth, maybe a little sweat. You drink some Gatorade. You look over and you have Pookie Johnson over there who's just dying with cramps and just can't do it, and you can't explain it.
Yeah, is it true that they say what's the saying? Don't buy a car after a holiday or on a Monday. Is everyone hungover from the weekend?
Back in the day, the auto industry had and not just Ford, but the whole auto industry had a bad reputation. It's just 100% true. Quality was down. It was just send it. Who cares? We'll fix it later, maybe. And, the old people getting drunk and beer bottles in cars, that's all true. But, nowadays, it's totally changed. There's also we're lazy union guys who sit around and build 4 cars every hour. Not true. We build 60-plus cars an hour, So a lot's changed from the early 90s to today.
Well, that's good to know, man. Well, if you ever see any of those new F-150s rolling out on the plant,
you want one?
I got steal one of those for me. What's that?
I got 5 in my backyard. You want one?
I figured, if you work for them, they just give them to you, don't they? Oh, here, I'll get this, something that a trainer in Green Bay asked me this, or thought this. So if you hear or you see whatever, the supposed young people, whatever, new millennials, I hate to sit here and harp on this.
Let's get them.
But he pointed to fantasy football. He believes, his theory, part of it is fantasy football, when kids grow up doing fantasy football, fantasy sports, it creates more individuals than team guys, because their whole life as a kid, subconsciously, basically, they're like, well, I hope, let's use Icky Woods as an example. Let's say if I was a little kid, I need Icky to play well today, and then I need a guy on the other team to play well. I need the other quarterback. I need Neil O'Donnell to play well too. And I'm just watching these guys, and they don't really care about the team winning. They care about these certain individuals playing well. Do you think there's anything to that might manifest later when these guys get, say they become pro athletes, that they're just in the back of their mind, they only know really individual type stuff. They don't really know what it's like to be on a team?
I'm not sure in the future. I know for me, it's kind of that way. I hate to be that guy, but I'm really from New England, so I'm a Patriots guy. Don't hold it against me, everybody. But I'll find myself going, all right, I've got, if the Patriots were playing, Detroit, and I had Joe Bell, if Joe Bell has 4 touchdowns and rushes for 250 yards, I'm okay, as long as the Patriots win by 3, right? And bad way of thinking, because now you start to go, I could take a Patriots loss if this means my guy gets a touchdown with 30 seconds left. I see that. I also see a lot more people knowing who people are in the NFL. When you and I were younger, I think you were growing up a Bengals fan. You really knew who was on Cincinnati. You couldn't tell who the backup quarterback for Green Bay was, because you knew who the backup quarterback for Cincinnati was. That was your team. You lived, you died by them. You had all their football cards, all the jerseys. You had the stickers on the wall, but you didn't have anybody else's. You didn't pay attention to Green. You didn't pay attention to New England, or so you lost touch with all the other teams. Now with fantasy, you now know who the backup quarterback for every team is. You know who the backup running back now for every team is, and it's more of an individual sport. Absolutely.
I wondered when the trainer told me that because I asked him, he'd been there for a long time, and I'm like, what do you like? Are guys different, than before when you were here in the early '90s? And that's when he kind of presented me with that. He's like, I think this this fantasy sports and different things like this is creating some individuals that won't, kill themselves for the team like it used to be, like all in for the team and whatever. And I was like, man, I've never even thought about that, but it makes a little bit of sense. I don't know. We'll see. I guess you can kind of check that going forward and ask kids in 15 years basically. But I mean, it makes a little bit of sense. I don't know. It's confusing. You never really be able to put your finger on it, but who knows? Maybe I'll let you keep your eye out for that since you're entrenched in this whole world.
Would you find yourself more likely to try fantasy after your NFL career is over? Would you feel more open to that, or are you just one of those guys? For the love of the game, keep it pure and simple.
I mean, it wouldn't I wouldn't feel like I'm not if I'm doing something wrong. Like whenever I'm done playing, if I started playing fantasy football or whatever. But I mean, I never say never with anything, but I don't know, like to sit there and pick specific players and to do all that. I don't see myself doing that anytime soon, but I mean, you never know. I don't know, man. It's weird. I feel like I don't really have any desire. Maybe it's just because I'm too close to the game now, but I don't have any desire to sit there and definitely don't want to sit through a draft and like pick players because the way I see it. So I want to do some broadcasting stuff when I'm done playing. I'd like to call games, do color commentary for games. And when people ask me questions about certain players or teams, I'm like, hey man, we're all guessing. Every single one of us is just this is our guess of what we think might happen in this game. And everyone's doing it. Yeah, you can use your stats and different things to back it up. But the thing is, the guys that are actually playing in the game and are coaching the game don't really know what's going to happen either. So you can't pinpoint this exact reason why things are going to happen or this is how the game's going to go. I know, blah, blah. So I have a hard time like being that guy. I just envision like that all-knowing, dude telling me how this guy's going to play or what's going to happen in a game when I'm like, hey, man, if you guess right, great, more power to you. But guess what? You're going to guess wrong a lot too. So I didn't really answer your question there, but I just kind of let you know what I thought. About.
I do have another question.
Whatever you want, man. You're the pro. What's your question?
Listen, this is kind of a fanboy question. I won't lie to you about this.
Okay.
Now, it seems like from the internet standpoint that the Green Bay Packer players are some of the most meme-worthy players out there. Those internet memes where there's do you guys ever, Matthews, Aaron Rodgers, yourself, always seem to pop up on different timelines and at least from what I've seen, at least Facebook and throughout the internet, but do people ever come up and like show you, hey, look at this meme with you in it, or hey, Rodgers, discount double, that kind of stuff? Do you guys ever look at them or discuss them or giggle? Come on, really? Did you say that about me?
No, I don't. The guys don't really discuss them. I mean, if another player might show them, like if it's a meme that's a dude fell down or was trying to do a Lambo leap and didn't make it into the stands or something, then yeah, guys might mess with them if someone made, like you said, made a meme of him falling or whatever. But not. No, it's not really. Guys don't really talk too much about that. Other than, I mean, guys will talk about and make fun of each other for things they do off the field more, than what happens during on the field, I guess. But I don't know, man. You're really tapped into this whole internet world of football, aren't you?
I'm married, man. There's not much else for me out there. No. And believe it or not, I'm not as entrenched as a lot of people think. A lot of it comes easy to me. I listen to a lot of podcasts when I'm at work.
What do you listen to? Like, give us some examples.
Oh, you know what? I love comedy stuff, like Improv for Humans. It's an improv comedy podcast done by Matt Besser. God, what else? Jimmy Pardo, Never Not Funny. If you ever get a chance, this guy is one of my favorite people. I had a chance to go and sit at the ball game with the guy. It was a blast. Steve Simone has a great Good Times podcast I like to listen to. He's a stand-up comedy. The Crab Feast, Ryan Sickler, Jay Larson. That's a pretty funny one out there. Kind of a Jay Moore help, get those guys started. So, there's a handful. I can name 5 other ones that I like.
Okay. Do you listen to any sports podcasts?
Very little. I like to if I listen to it, it's maybe like a Monday morning quarterback to kind of, if I miss something or a late game, to kind of get me caught up to, that and what happened. I'll read the newspaper. I'm an old-fashioned guy with that. But believe it or not, I'm not hooked up to the laptop and my phone 24 hours, 7 days a week. I really am. I'm old school. I can leave my phone at home and go out and watch a movie and not get the cold sweats or anything like that. Like, I got to be connected, who's texting me right now. I'm just kind of old school like that. But I like to get my news other places. And, you'd be shocked at how much time I just don't open my laptop and, I'll get caught up later. That's kind of how it goes. Not a lot happens between Tuesday and Thursday,
Yeah, you really are old school, man. Terrestrial radio and you read the newspaper.
Hey, listen, I'm trying to bring sexy back, man.
You're trying hard, man. It's going to be a long fight for you because that newspaper's going out quicker than the radio, buddy. I guess, do you read the newspaper on your iPad or do you read like the physical newspaper?
You know what? Every once in a while, a physical newspaper. I am that guy. I like to get the old, USA.
You like to feel it, don't you? You like to feel the paper, like my dad will say.
I had a bag cell phone once. TVs, believe it or not, you young kids don't know what it's like when you had to get up and click the TV. I had. Yeah.
You're only 37. No, you didn't. What were you at your great grandma's house?
Actually, yeah. That's the only time.
Exactly.
But those are tough times, man.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I'm telling you, I commend you on your fight for the things that seem to be going out of style or going out of. Like the physical newspaper. I don't know. See, you tell me. This is a question I have that I've talked about. Do you think once, let's say, like, are your parents around?
Yes.
Okay. Are your parents like in the late 50s?
No, not the 50s. They're not physically in the house with me, but they're still around. Yeah.
Okay, well, it's good you don't live with them still, but.
God.
And maybe if you're just taking care of them, but if you were doing all this fantasy sports and you were living like in your parents' basement, that would be then.
That's the end of the interview, right? We're done.
It'd be awesome, man. It would actually. It would really add to this. I can't imagine the set.
More meatloaf, please.
Yeah, exactly. Like I was gonna say, like, sorry for anybody living in their parents' basement that's 40 doing a fantasy football podcast, but I'm actually not sorry to you at all because you're not listening to this podcast for sure.
It's a lifestyle you chose, buddy.
Yeah, to that guy, like, we don't know his struggle. So we don't know that guy's struggle, man. But
basic cable, man. Yeah. Basic cable.
Ice cream shop had layoffs last summer, so he had to move back in with his parents. But so before I was even saying that, okay. So when our parents' generation dies, let's say when my parents' generation dies off, will there be anyone left that watches the local news, especially getting their local weather? Yeah, right. Or reads the newspaper? Or even, I would say, almost go on a limb and say, listen to terrestrial radio more than, a couple times here and there a week.
I think no. The farther away we get away from that stuff, it's like records, that kind of stuff. Their parents, would there ever be a day that you didn't listen to the record player? Baseball games on the radio back in the day. I think it's kind of like that. Things change, things evolve. When our parents die, there may be a time where, I don't know about your mom or dad, but let's say your dad read the Sunday paper every Sunday. And when he passes away, you may find yourself going out and going, getting gas going, I'm going to pick up a Sunday paper just because my dad did it once or twice. I think for our generation, that will be what kind of keeps it around for a little bit longer. But then your kids won't do that because they didn't watch you do it all the time. So I guess no. I think it's going to kind of go away and evolve into something different.
Yeah, you have to. It's like any business or anything going on right now. It's like Blockbuster. Blockbuster's gone because Netflix came and everything's streaming and on demand. It's like DVDs are basically obsolete in my mind. I haven't bought a DVD or tried to watch one in forever because I have paid $99 for an Apple TV box, and there's Kindle Fire and all this stuff now that you can do it. You just stream it directly to your TV. So that's all my kids know. They know what DVDs are, my 4 and 2-year-old, but they don't, like, they understand that they already understand, like, streaming services and, like, everything's on demand, boom, right here, like that. So they're not going to grow up with any of this stuff where, I'm going to sit around and just wait until my favorite show comes on at 9 o'clock tonight. Like, I can't wait. I got 3 more days.
You know what else though? You brought up Blockbuster, and you were probably the same as me. Every Friday night we went out to Blockbuster. The parents opened the door and said, "You get to pick something," and we only got to watch what was in that store. So you go over and you find a movie, and you have to see if the 2 DVD cases were behind it to get it.
2 VHS cases.
I remember VHS and the DVDs, or if you had like a video game system, you rented a game from Blockbuster. And you got 3 days, and if you kept it an extra day, your parents get mad. It cost them $3. Now, $3. I waste $3 every 5 minutes. It seems like
playing that Minecraft game with your daughter. You probably waste a lot more than that.
I'll beat her in that too. Let me tell you. You know what? I'm a better Minecrafter than her. And the day she grows old enough to see this, I want her to know I will Minecraft the heck out of her.
Is Minecraft? I don't even know. I know I've heard people talk about it. Is that just where there's squares and you just press the button and like a?
Yeah, that's it, man. That's it. You just build stuff.
Okay.
I'm so into it. But I'm a better builder than my kid. I want to put the record straight now.
Yeah, for now, for the next month until they overtake you.
Wow. But, I mean, we didn't have computers. We didn't have the internet. I don't want this to turn into look at AJ and Dennis talk about old fogies they were.
Too late, man. Too late. We're already too deep, but that's all right. Don't worry about it.
With football outside. Remember playing freeze tag? Do you even remember freeze tag?
Yeah, freeze tag and kick the can
awesome.
And all that stuff. Yeah, man.
Friday nights you got to stay out, and 10 o'clock it's dark, and you were playing hide and go seek in your neighbor's backyard. And if you didn't mess anything up, they didn't care if you were in their backyard back then.
Now you get shot.
Now, I'm not going to my neighbor's backyard now. No.
Don't be looking in their windows either, Dennis.
It's just the next creepy right there. Thanks.
Yeah, especially if you look. Never mind. I'm not even going to get into it.
Thanks, bud. Thanks. You're fired because of you.
No, you're a stand-up guy. I know. I can tell. Well, I'm going to start to wrap this thing up before we just start reminiscing about old times and walking through 20 feet of snow to get to school every day, like we're 85 years old. But where can people find you at when they want to look you up, get some advice, whatever? Just say hi. Just tell you how much they like your show.
Listen, I definitely appreciate you having me on. This has been really one of the cooler things in my career. And I'm not saying that because you're right here. It really is. I'm still kind of, listen, I don't want to, I know we're wrapping this up and I don't want to get into a story, but, as a kid, it seemed like there was a huge divide between kids and fans and athletes growing up. I mean, when we were 10, 11, 12, meeting an athlete, it was a once in a life, maybe one kid in every school got a chance to do it on accident. There was the social media couldn't tie us together. So anytime I get a chance to talk or meet an athlete, it's still kind of cool to me, no matter how many times I do it, because I still remember growing up at the baseball cards and going, man, if I could ever meet this guy, so I definitely appreciate you having me on because, you've Goldberg, that was an awesome interview, Brett Michaels, and now Dennis Farrell, So, but I definitely appreciate it. You can go to the FantasySidelineShow.net. That's catch all the podcasts there. Twitter, it's right there. If you've watched any of the podcasts, if you're listening.
Boom, Todd will link it for you.
Todd, stand-up guy, buddy.
Yes,
this bud's for you. But if you're listening audio-wise, Dennis DENNIS 77 Farrell FARRELL. That's my Twitter. And, my email addresses are all on the website. You can find me. It's not hard, guys.
And your Call of Duty name as well. Why don't you plug that again for the kids?
Mr. Bigglesworth, the cat from Austin Powers. That's how nerdy I am.
I was wondering where I knew that from. Okay. Yes. Good. Yeah, I don't have a system. But, yeah, that's hopefully the kids come on there and find you and play. And maybe you can mow them down. That's
what I need. A 14-year-old better than me that listens to the AJ HawkCast.
Yeah, I don't know, man. We'll see. These 14-year-olds, who knows what they're doing? They get bored by this. The hour-long sit-down talks and conversations, they're probably bored within the first 2 seconds, so they'll turn that stuff off. But we'll get them. Someday they'll come back to us.
Born in America, one fan at a time.
For sure, man. Well, Dennis, really appreciate you, man. I know you reached out to me, and I've seen some of your work, and I know I respect your hustle, man. It's a cool thing I think you're doing and what you're building up over there and what you've already built, and working all day at the Ford Motor Plant, making cars for us great Americans to drive around, and then bam, you come home and you turn into like a Joe Buck / Jim Nance / who knows? One of those comedians you mentioned, and you're doing your thing, man. So you have to respect. I have to respect the hustle, and I love it. I think it's a good thing that people should see that. Hey, you're not waiting around. Go out and do it. Who cares? There's no excuses. Don't sit there and say, "Well, how would I ever go about doing that?" Well, guess what? Look at you, Dennis. You're doing it, man, and that's a great message to send. I think your kids, anyone who sees that, will recognize that in you. So good for you, buddy.
Thank you so much, man. That's why I try to tell people, and even anybody reaches out to me and says, "How do I get into it?" Just do it.
Just do it. Exactly. Don't even sit there. Don't plan. Don't do anything. Just do it. And guess what? You're gonna suck. You're gonna be terrible early on. You might be terrible for a long time, but eventually it's gonna figure itself out, and you'll realize if you should be doing that or not. But give it a shot, and don't be a little baby and talk about it.
And honestly, who cares if you suck? If you're having fun and you get a couple downloads and you're happy doing it, do it. Don't let anybody else tell you suck. That's if I listened to the people when I first started out, I've been done by episode 6. I packed up, gone home, and I still get people that tell me I suck. It doesn't bother me because I'm having fun, man.
Well, if people don't tell you suck, then you have no impact, and they're indifferent to you, and that's the worst case scenario when people are like, well, if they don't care either way, that's the worst, I think.
Next level is getting recognized in the men's bathroom and having someone want to shake your hand. That's what I'm aiming for.
When you're at so let's just say, if you're standing at the urinal on a wall next to a guy, say he just takes a little peek over at you and he's like, Dennis, and he just reaches his hand across and gives you a shake, just go ahead and do it. Just shake it right there. Don't wash your hand. Just shake it.
Come on. But you see that look, right? I mean, when you're in there, you kind of see the guy, and he kind of gets a little starry-eyed and turns his head just ever so slightly. You go, crap, he knows who I am.
No, I tell him, eyes up, buddy. Eyes up. I'm up here.
I like that. Hey, I have a face, man.
What color are my eyes, Billy? Whoever the kid. What color are my eyes? Yeah.
I have a personality. I'm not just a piece of meat.
Oh, God. So stop staring at my meat. There you go. Boom. You just tied it right together for me. You gave me a perfect ending. All right, man. Dennis, appreciate you, buddy. We'll put your links up. You open my eyes to a different world of fantasy sports that I don't really know a whole lot about, and some people, I'm sure, will really appreciate it. So, Dennis, thanks again, man. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, man.
We're glad you could join us for today's conversation. After you subscribe to the show, head over to thehawkcast.com or reach out to AJ directly on Twitter at @officialAJHawk to recommend future guests that will help us inspire people to keep talking. Thanks again, and we look forward to speaking with you next time on the HawkCast.